Welcome back to CSS Reign. Um, sorry, I guess I'm still shell shocked from the Chicago draw. Um, is this an improvement? I don't know. We'll go over um Seattle's 1-1 draw in Houston under the Houston Heat that got delayed because of said heat, as there's some stuff around the NWSL about playing in that heat. Thought I saw something about the commissioner trying to fine Kansas City for heat related stuff. So it's a whole thing. Sure, Bella knows more than I do about that. But yeah, I don't know. Seattle has to battle back. I wonder, can you hear the anthem going on outside? No? Oh, okay. They're practicing for the anthem here at the ballpark. Um, yeah, no, this was an interesting match. Just following along with it, I was able to see the height of the goal. I was actually moving between T-Mobile Park and Lumen Field from the Mariners to the Sounders game um, when the Houston goal got scored, so I didn't know how bad it was. Um, it's not great, but it was interesting, and I'm sure we'll talk about the match. But I thought it was really interesting to hear Laura Harvey talk just post match because it was me and you, Bella, and one other guy on the Zoom um, about because there was a miscommunication, bad play. Phoebe McLaren to cough the ball up for the rain. Yasmin Ryan takes advantage. Um, and Laura was talking about how much Phoebe's grown, how even last year, and I thought Phoebe had grown a lot going into last year, you know. Um, Said that last year Phoebe would have like basically imploded, and she didn't this year. So stuff like that kind of stuck out to me. Nice to see Jordan Heidema, 2 weeks, 3 goal contributions. Um, and the play to lead up to that, all around very fun. Sofia Huerta gets her 32nd assist of her career, becomes the league's all-time assist leader for the regular season with 32, breaking, I believe it was a four-way tie with Lynn
Jess McDonald,
DiBernardo.
Jess McDonald, and
Yeah,
Vanessa DiBernardo.
yes. Um, so nice there. It was also joked about, what is she gonna do if Lynn ties her up again? And we have this sort of back and forth. So, um, I mean, given all the circumstances, I'm not upset with the result. Just, would like to, of course, get the points, right? I don't know, Bella, what did you see in this one? Whether it's how they conceded, the build up and the play and the history of the goal that they scored, or just and what did you take away from the draw on the road against Houston?
Yeah, I think it's not a bad result. Um, Laura had also said in the post game that their goal for the second half of the season was to do better than they did the first half of the season. So they had lost 1-0 to Houston in the earlier part of the season. This time they draw 1-1. I think it's important that they were able to get a draw, honestly, after they conceded that goal. I'm sure, everyone would have loved if they didn't concede that goal. Um, but at the same time, showing some fight back in conditions that are just really tough. Houston is not an easy place to play because it is so hot. Laura was not happy with the fact that they warmed up in conditions that were um, warmer than they should have been. I guess it was fine 20 minutes later for them to play, but it was still hot enough that they needed hydration breaks and everything. Um, and, I mean, it's just a tough environment, especially coming from Seattle. It's just very different. Um, the players, of course, were like, that's not an excuse, but it is something to keep in mind. Obviously, I mean, Sofia Huerta was the one talking about it, and she played in Houston for several years of her career. So if anyone knows about, Houston being a little difficult, it's Sofia. Um, I definitely think that the goal is disappointing. Laura talked about it, saying that Phoebe and Claudia know what they did wrong, also feel horrible about it. Um, But at the same time, they did a good job of putting it past them and continuing to play. I think the announcers were very, I don't want to say pro Houston, but they were very convinced that Houston were the better team and that they deserved that goal. And while Houston had the majority of the possession and did create some dangerous crosses and some dangerous chances, Claudia didn't really have to make a save. Like they didn't, it's not like they got a ton of opportunities. So I think the bummer is that they know they could have gotten 3 points without that mistake. Um, and, Laura didn't want to discredit Houston, but at the same time, wasn't saying that Houston's pressure was what caused the goal. Um, if anyone watched the previous Houston game and the own goal that was scored by Emily Sonnet for Gotham when they played Houston, it seems like they have a bit of a propensity for forcing errors like that. Um, but Laura seemed to think it was more on themselves. So, it's a two-sided thing because yes, it's disappointing. Um, at the same time, they didn't give up after they scored a goal and they were able to find an equalizer and not concede and give up 3 points. Another thing Laura had said was that, she told her team to go out and win it, but not at the expense of the tie. Like, do not lose the game because you're trying to go win the game. Um, and some of her subs reflected that, bringing on Emily Mason to sort of shore up defense, um, bringing on a veteran like Jess Fishlock and having her mostly kind of do defensive duty at that point, which I doubt Jess loved. But they saw out the game well, and I think that was really important. In terms of the goal, obviously it's great to see Jordan Heidema scoring, and that feels great for her. Um, I think I had said this in a Discord chat. I had said this to you. Um, I don't think that Jordan thrives as a lone nine. For a lot of the game, Coco Mondesir kept trying to sort of play balls in behind like there was a different player in that position. And it just didn't work because Jordan's not really the player who's going to run in behind. Um, that's more of a Maddie Darlene, Emery Adamas, Lynn Williams, Mia Fishel, really any of the forwards except for Jordan Heidema. She's just not a running in behind kind of player. So I think once Lynn Biondolo came into the game, that was a big turning point for them. And what stuck out to me about the goal is it was very shortly after Lynn came in. And what happens when Lynn comes in is Jordan is no longer a lone nine up there with all of the defenders on her, knowing that she is a header threat. Once Lynn came in, Lynn draws a lot of attention from the defenders in the box. Jordan was able to, head that ball into the goal with really only one defender on her, which is, significantly different than sort of like two or three that she'd had on her for most of the game. She also sort of thrives doing those sort of later runs into the box, or even if she is sort of just stationed in the box waiting for a service, having another player like Lynn there takes a lot of the tension away because even though Lynn isn't necessarily known for her heading ability, you simply have to mark Lynn Biondolo in the box. There is no option. So I think, I was a little surprised to see the starting lineup that we did, because I do think that they kind of struggled to find opportunities. It does seem like it was sort of Laura doing some rotation, with players and really just trying to spread out minutes, honestly. Um, Especially raising your hand, yes.
didn't want to just outright interrupt you. I know, and I think she said to us post game she planned with Dee and Coco not getting minutes last match. She was like, "I knew I was going to start them." I believe is what she said, and I was even doing that when I was looking at the minutes. I was like, "Oh, Jordan Bug, no minutes." I figured the plan is going to be. She's talked a few times, I think, at training and pregame, post match, whatever it may be, about you know the the way the schedule is, right? How they're going to want to rotate and handle that. So I think it's just, yeah, they're using the depth to their advantage, and this is again, this goes back to I think talk about this last week or was this 2 episodes ago, about how you've got the deepest roster, whatever, use it, right?
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I remember her saying the Coco thing, so I wanted to mention that.
Yeah, no, it definitely makes sense. Like, don't run your players into the ground when you're playing 12 games in 12 weeks. Also sort of going from a Sunday to a Friday game, like she knows there's a bit of a quicker turnaround with this one coming up. So I, I just I just don't know if the particular way it was arranged um, was the most beneficial. We now know, thanks to Lynn Biondolo on her own podcast with Sam Lewis, that she is on a minutes restriction because of a knee issue she's been dealing with, which explains a lot of why she hasn't really been starting, why she hasn't been playing heavy minutes, even though she is one of the most talented players on that roster, unquestionably. And you honestly want her playing as much as possible. But obviously, long term health comes first. That is the priority. Um, it makes sense that Lynn wasn't able to start, but I do think that Jordan has thrived when she is not a lone nine like she was playing up until the subs. Um, so I'm interested to see if that continues to happen. Just because you need someone else to sort of draw some of the runs away from Jordan. She likes to play, not necessarily play make, but play a little bit deeper. Um, so that's sort of just something to watch for the future. And then the thing I really found most fascinating, to be honest, was obviously Sofia Huerta getting the assist record. Had kind of been waiting on that since like last season. It had been a while that she had been tied with 31, and obviously great to see her get that and just sort of reestablished and reaffirmed to me that, as Laura put it, like her special quality, the thing that she brings is her crossing. Um, and so because of that, I asked, with all due respect, why play her at center back if what she's so good at is crossing. And credit to Laura for giving me a very detailed and actually informative, like helpful answer. Like I genuinely was like, oh, this makes so much more sense now. Um, and what she talked about was when they play the three back, um, and sort of have those wingers on the side. The wingers are sort of rarely in crossing positions. And if you think about it, that's very true. Madison Curry and Maddie Darlene are not sending in a ton of crosses. They're getting in really high and they're combining with their teammates, but they're not sending in crosses like we saw Sofia do when she played as an outside back in the defensive line of four that we had seen Laura play for so many years. Um, so what Laura said is really ideally within that sort of 3-5 back, Sofia's best opportunities to cross are going to come as a center back. And when that winger is pushed really high, and then Sofia can push higher. And she said, getting her in those positions is really just a matter of finding an extra pass and having a little bit of patience in some scenarios. And I think that's what we saw with the goal. We saw some patience. They honestly, I don't know why Houston gave Sofia so much goddamn time to send that ball into the box because I don't care what position she is crossing from, that is not the person that you give the time to pick out a pass into the box. It is simply not. Um, but so I thought that was really interesting. And I think it'll be important to Seattle's success to continue to get Sofia in those kinds of positions because those crosses are so incredibly lethal. Like it was a great header from Jordan, but it was a pinpoint brilliant cross. She had two players to aim for. She said she saw both of them and she sent it in. And like that is exactly the kind of position you want her in. And the position I was concerned she would not get in when she was playing center back. I have said many times I don't understand why she's playing center back because you want her crosses. Um, so now that I understand that logic a bit more, it makes a lot more sense to me. And I hope that they can continue to find her in those positions. Because it's just, I mean, even if you're just creating havoc in the box, especially as soon as you are, playing the official some more minutes, like you have some really, I think Jordan is obviously one of the better headers of the team. Lynn is certainly very capable. The official we know is capable, even though we haven't necessarily seen it for the Reign yet. Thank you, yes, for that. Um, so definitely want to see Sofia continuing to get in those positions because honestly, I feel like that's kind of the first time since she's moved to that, center back spot that we've really seen her get in that sort of position and send in those crosses. I think we've seen her get high a couple times, but I don't think we've seen a ton of direct crosses into the box from her. Um, so I just want to see more of that. Her crosses are so, so good, um, and are such a dangerous weapon if the Reign can continue to find her in those positions to send them in. And then obviously the other important thing was that there were bodies in the box, right? That Jordan and Lynn were there, and the way the Reign were sort of attacking at that point, they had sort of spread out Houston's defense, and also Houston also plays with a three back, so they had drawn, two of the defenders were kind of drawn to Lynn, and then there was just one on Jordan. And it wasn't like the box was super crowded because everything else was kind of spread out. So I think it was a really, well worked goal, especially considering Houston had a majority of the possession. Um, and, in this particular case, I don't think Houston having majority of the possession meant that they were the better team by far or anything. Certainly they created chances, but we saw against Chicago and that getting in behind the back line was a problem. And they did not allow Houston to do that, even with some really dangerous front runners like Messiah Bright up there. Um, so, defensive improvement was another big, big thing for them after letting in 7 goals in 2 games. So even though that was an incredibly disappointing goal, they only let in one. So I think overall, all the kind of things we wanted to see improve, we we saw improved, and we saw sort of some things that we want to see more of, like Sofia getting into crossing positions.
This, with the Edema stuff and the Huerta stuff, it just makes me think more about like, I know Laura talked about it earlier in the season, but more recently with Jordan, after the Chicago match, talking about the different ways again the Reign team can attack. You talk about you just talked about what Jordan does best, um, and the different options that you can list. You're talking about Coco trying to find someone in behind. I was like, I think it's fair to say we haven't seen the very best of Norelia Mondesir in a rain kit quite yet. It's fair to say. Whether that's, dealing because of dealing with injuries and, how they've tried to handle the roster, right? But like if she's able to connect on some of those with some of the players that you listed, and then again, like it's fun to think about, you mentioned Lynn and the injury she's dealing with, of course. Mia Fishel, who, you know, as you mentioned in the last episode, it isn't the total plan for her to come in this year and right away contribute, right? Um, I kind of forget who we talked about pretty early on, pretty consistently, and Maddie Darlene, who, as Laura has said to us, she probably wants to be running at people more, but she's playing a different role for the Reign. And if that's, how it best helps this club, so be it, but it's fun for me to think about the possibilities again in a year that, as you mentioned, we talked about heavily last week. This isn't, we are, championship or bust. So, um, yeah, no, it was interesting. Oh yeah, just to kind of go over some things again, just taking away, you know, um, the growth that Laura talked about for Phoebe, because again, I have totally swung from when the transaction first happened to who is this and why are we bringing her in here? Why is she getting starts to wow, she's really, someone that, when she was out for the one match, I was concerned. I was like, what is this gonna look like?
She
So
would be an
hearing
Iron
about that
Woman if
growth,
it wasn't for injury. Like she would play
yes,
every minute of every game.
yeah. I'm thinking of doing something. Hey, maybe next week we'll get her on the show. Oh, interesting. Okay, sorry. That nice to see Jordan rolling along, because like we talked about last week in her, player of the week performance, I know she talked to Laura about wanting to improve, whether it was, goal contribution or just generally helping the club. And it's cool to see Sophia, make that history again. It's been one of my first interviews with Sophia and talked about her, shifting to kind of like an outside back. And I mean, it's worked out pretty well, So I'm
And
going
players
back
and
to this.
puppies.
Yes, that's right. And then she went on loan, and people were like, "You're cursed." That's another topic.
Only halfway cursed.
Claudia worked out pretty well. Um, oh yes, leads me to this. Kind of looking at where they are again. Um, you've got what, 9 matches to play. It's a 26 game season, I think. Um, you have 17 matches through. Everyone's 17. You're in sixth. You're tied in points with Portland. Um, you are 3 points out of third place, which is San Diego, which is who you faced on Friday. Um, I don't know. This can be a shorter answer. Just, did you see anything? Oops, sorry, I just realized my hand was on the microphone. Probably don't want to do that. Did you see anything in this Houston match, or did you learn anything about the club, in this match to make you feel better or worse, when it comes to the possibilities of I don't want to get ahead of myself, but I do feel like there's a strong chance they do get back into the postseason after what happened last year, right? Does again to go back to my original point, is anything from this Houston match, um, whether it's trends, whether it's something that happened strictly in this match, make you feel better or worse about the potential of a run for this club once we do get to that point in the fall? Or is it just no, you need to see more?
I mean, I think the thing about playoffs is, especially in soccer, it's one and done, right? So it's a bit of a crapshoot almost a lot of the time. Um, there's, you could have a terrific regular season and then you lose one game and you're done. You can also go on a big run and win a championship out of nowhere, like Gotham kind of did. Um, I think, I mean, the thing that I had talked about last week was, and the biggest thing I needed to see was that the defense could go back to the very stout, not conceding defense that they had been playing in the first half of the season. And I think they showed that against Houston. I think they prevented Houston from getting any good looks in transition, from getting in behind. Really without that mistake, they might have had a clean sheet. Um, so I think the biggest thing for me was just seeing that that defense could go back to what it had been after um, those two very rough games. Um, and that was even without Jordan Bugg playing in this one. I do think that Lou Barnes returning is impactful just because of her her veteran knowledge. Like I think particularly on defense, there is it's almost not that you can't have veteran forwards or anything like that, but there is something about defense that I think is so cerebral, and a lot of decision making depends on having a certain amount of experience, that I think Lou Barnes obviously has the most of literally any player in the NWSL. Um, so I think having her back in there did shore up the defense. Um, and I also think that seeing them come down or come back when they've gone down is the kind of thing you need to see for a playoff team, right? You know, you can't be bogged down by a mistake. You can't give up when you go down a goal. You have to be able to fight, even if that's just fighting to force overtime and penalty kicks or something like that. Like you have to be able to come back from a mistake. And I think they did a very good job of that in this game. Um, so, it's hard to say how any of that will really translate to playoffs because, like I said, it just is, it's one and done. It's you could put out your best performance of the year or your worst performance of the year, and you just kind of have to deal with it. Um, but seeing the improvement in terms of not giving up after a mistake and the defense going back to being much harder to score on than it had been in the past two games, are things that give me a lot of hope and a lot of good thoughts about what they could accomplish, if they start to make that run.
And I'll add on to that. You talk about, sort of the resiliency there, right? Being able to take a punch, give a punch, so on, sort of thing. I think, in terms of this match specifically, for, to go back to the rotation, for different players who maybe, and it's not a knock on them, but for players that aren't necessarily in your, strongest 11 to, play a role in that, I think also speaks to something that playoff teams will need because, they're dealing with stuff right now, as Bella mentioned. They're, Lynn's not fully healthy, you know, um, this still kind of waiting on Ryan Brown, see to, but even then, where does she fit in with his club? Because Flora, we were talking about with the depth, Flores, since it's tough to even decide who's in the, on the reserves. Um, Hannah Glass is dealing with something. Rancer Nagorcevic is still dealing with something. Um, so you don't know what the hell this roster will look like when we get to the point. Okay. Touch wood. Um, so for to see that, it's not like yeah, they withered because the depth was in, and some kind of part of that to me, seeing the younger players get this experience now, being able to say, hey, you're gonna get hit in the mouth. How are you gonna deal with that? is big. It's been talked about. I'm sure you've heard it, Bella, when we do the press conferences, like after the Chicago match. I think it was on the presser after the Portland match as well. Some folks have asked, like, hey, did having a younger 11, play a role in the final result? And sure, you can look at it as the experience part. I look at it as we get into this final stretch, and not just again, not that this club is looking for a championship or die this year. Is Jordan Bugg, is Maddie Darlene, is Ainsley McCammon, are they going to be better pros because they have dealt with these, difficult situations, these difficult games? Because what's the best teacher is these game situations. So them being tested will pay dividends. And so for me to still gain points while getting these lessons, granted, they're draws. It's good. I think that's good. So, all right, let's close this out. San Diego.
Wait, I do have one more
Oh,
thing. I think it was earlier in the season, Laura had talked about, um, the lessons the team needed to learn, and that it was really nice to learn those lessons winning games. But that, it wasn't necessarily always going to come as wins. And the other thing you reminded me is, the thing about Seattle's depth this season is when they do get punched in the mouth like they did, they then bring on Lindy and Dolo. Like they were only down by a goal, and then they get to bring in Linby and Dolo to help turn things around. They brought, I think Sally Menti came in. Jess Fishlock didn't start the game, came in late. Mia Fishel was an unused sub on the bench. Emery Adamas came in. Emery Adamas being your leading scorer on the season. Um, your, you were able to, you know, be at 1-0 with you're not normal starting players. Maybe you're not, you know, best starting 11 and still able to keep it an incredibly tight game. And then you're able to bring in game changers. Like, I think something that, you know, every NWSL team can bring subs on, but not all of them can bring on the quality of subs that Seattle has, particularly in the attack. And I think that is something that will continue to be important throughout the season and would continue to be important in playoffs. Like, especially as we're going through 12 games in 12 weeks, and teams get tired, being able to bring in fresh legs late in a game that are incredibly talented and incredibly dangerous, even if it ends up being that the player you started, Jordan Heidema, is the one who scores, right? Like, you are still bringing in players who are affecting the game in a very positive way. Um, like something I think we see in the WNBA sometimes is like when you bring in subs, the level of play goes down a little bit. And not saying that that is the case with the Storm this year, because Don Malonga is playing very well. But I think when Seattle has made subs, they've normally made them better. Like, I think the Chicago match was sort of a weird fluke in a way. Like, I don't think, again, I don't think the subs made the team worse or anything like that. I think it was just sort of unfortunate. Um, but most of the time, they're bringing in subs and they are impacting the game quite significantly. And so continuing to have those options, right? Even if Lynn is not 90 minutes fit, if you get 90 minutes of Lynn Biondolo at the end of the game, and she's running at the goalkeeper and terrifying defenses because she has fresh legs and they're 60 minutes in, like, that is still incredibly important and incredibly impactful. So, like, the depth plays multiple roles in terms of not just being able to rotate throughout this sort of long stretch of games, but also being able to bring in players off the bench who are really going to change the game and can turn things around if you're down. So that was the other thing that you kind of reminded me of.
gonna be the optimist again. You're making all these points. We're making these points. I feel better about the rest of the season. I don't know. So, yes, I have to get to the important stuff about San Diego in this match. Not the fact that they're playing the Wave, not the fact that the Wave are the, third seed right now. Oh, Jesus, didn't realize they were ahead of Orlando. No, it's the fact that this match on Friday, August 29th, 7:30 p.m. at Lumen Field is Hello Kitty night, fella. Hello Kitty night. Did you know this? If you go to the Reign website and you hover over tickets and go down to there are a few good options. I wanted to mention the first match on us thing. The Sounders started doing that. Um, it's neat. So if you want to experience a Reign match and you haven't done so, you can do that. It's on the drop-down menu. But if you go to theme matches and promo nights, you can see that it's Hello Kitty night on August 29th. You can buy a 25 anywhere. I think they have tickets 25 to $28. Still available as I click. Oh no, the deadline has passed. God damn it. I was going to buy a Hello Kitty hat. This is terrible. We can't post this episode. I'm going to be very upset. Okay, well, I'll still include the promo photo, but yes, it's going to be very important. Bella will probably witness me try to steal one of the hats. It's a Hello Kitty bucket hat, much like the Mariners have a Hello Kitty bucket hat. One of
It's
the
gonna
players,
be
Victor
like
Robles.
the Megan ones they did though, where they're for the size of child heads.
Oh, this is true. Yeah, they don't fit my gigantic fucking head.
Yeah, I also do
There's my
not have a
swear word for
child
the episode.
size head.
What a
Children have
shame.
small heads.
Yeah, because they're children.
I know,
Um,
but it's a bummer because it's like a cute bucket hat that I have, but I can't wear it because it doesn't fit. It just like makes me look weird, like I have a tall head.
well, it sounds like a skill issue. Um, yeah, that match in NWSL Plus, Paramount Plus nationally. It's on Fox 13 locally. Um, it's interesting to look at the form for San Diego. Excuse me, three draws, a win, and then a loss to Louisville, which interesting.
A bit surprising,
Rain
yes.
actually, hmm?
A bit surprising, yes.
Yeah, the Rain actually have better form in their past four. Two wins, two draws, one loss, three draws, one win, one loss for San Diego. Um, I don't know, Bella, what to know about San Diego. I mean, Seattle's kind of dominated the head-to-head since the club came into the league. Obviously, no Naomi Girma anymore. Um, old friend Kristen McNabb over there. I don't know. What have you seen from San Diego so far this year?
Yeah, I mean, despite their most recent results, they are very dangerous going forward with players like Delphine Cascarino, Kenza Dolly, even Melanie Barcenas. They have gosh, I'm gonna kind of forget her name. I think Lorena Fazer, who they signed from PSG recently, another sort of young French player. Um, so they have quite a bit of attacking firepower. I think that defense is once again going to be very important. That would sort of be my key to the game. Um, just because I mean San Diego had several games where they were putting up like 3 or 4 goals. Um, and at the same time they've leaked goals a little bit. Um, so I think if the Rain can be solid defensively and then take their opportunities on offense, um, they should be okay. But San Diego have really turned a corner since Jonas Eidevall took over. They've, he's done a really good job, I think, with the personnel that he has and figuring out sort of what's best. I do think Delphine Cascarino is probably their biggest threat right now. Um, they also have, players like Adriana Leone, um, some young players as well. They also have, I believe, a relatively young back line. At least Trinity Armstrong on the back line is pretty young. So I think it'll be an interesting matchup. Um, because I do think it will be either very low scoring or very high scoring, and there will not be really an in between. Um, I believe last time we played San Diego, it was 2-1. Um, it's been relatively rare that San Diego have been kept off the score sheet in their games. Not that it has not happened at all, um, but the racing result was a bit of a outlier. Um, Certainly, it seems like their form post international break, it's not quite as good as it was before the break. Um, but yeah, I think it'll be a really fun matchup. San Diego have a lot of really fun tactical and technically talented players. So the Reign are going to have to just be very tight with their defense and make sure that they're not allowing San Diego to score a bunch of goals and then taking their opportunities. I think that's my thoughts.
Yeah, it's been interesting to kind of see how the newer franchises in the league um go through their evolution. Um, both California teams. I think San Diego's obviously had more success, but did I say San Diego teams? I mean California teams.
You
Oops.
said California teams.
Oh, good. Okay. I'm
Yeah.
getting old, Bella. Um, yeah, it's just kind of interesting to me to witness how they handle things, you know, um, especially with, them getting the expansion draft players they did. Angel City got Madison Hammond and Angel City. San Diego got Kristen McNabb. So, yeah, big one. I mean, you've done well against San Diego in the past. Bella mentioned the 2-1 win that Seattle had earlier in the year. Um, and this does play a role in the standings. So, you
Yeah,
know,
100%. Definitely the standings are an important part of this because if you can jump up to be even on points with the team in third place, obviously it's pretty much a given at this point that Kansas City is going to take the Shield.
yeah.
Um, and I think
Mhm.
Washington has also separated themselves a little bit in second place. Um, but
Take a look.
the more leeway that you can give yourself and the closer that you can get, the better. Always.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Seattle's 5 points behind Washington, the 31.
Okay, they haven't
Um,
separated themselves as much as I thought.
yeah, they're a little bit up there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, the best it's interesting because I'll end on this. Nico Tamarian, local news guy around here, did an Instagram post, and he was like, "Oh, it's all ahead of them. Like the Mariners and the Storm and the Sounders are all in the playoff spot." I was like, "Yeah, the Reign are too. Like all of the teams that are actively in their regular season are in good. It's gonna be fun in this area in September. Like it is hypothetically in front of everybody. I'm here at the ballpark today. I can turn you guys, and you can see this at the ballpark today. The Mariners, are my tripod down here is closed. Open, please. Mm. Um, the Mariners, they're only a game and a half behind Houston for the top spot in the AL West. The Sounders are fourth place in the Western Conference, and I think they're kind of like the NWSL. I think San Diego, the expansion MLS team is atop the West standings, but I think Seattle could move up to two or three. The Reign, we've just obviously been talking about them in the Storm. For as bad as that stretch was, they had Bella, as you and I both know. I mean, they've won what, four of their last five. Um, and they play a big game tonight against a Fever team that is still without her. Um, and Indiana was a team that was like right above you in the standings. So it's an important game. So yeah, it's gonna be fun around here. Um, you know, I know one team making a title would mean a lot more to me than anybody else. So, and that's about the team we're doing this show for. So, The day that happens, I think we'll just do like a live stream from Rough and Tumble Pub, and Bella and I will both get hammered. Um,
Yes.
so we'll look forward to that. So until we see you next time, take care of yourselves. Be well. Do whatever you can to make today a great.
Hey, Charles.
Hey, Jen.
Hey, where are you going to watch all the away games for Seattle Reign FC this year?
Away games. Well, since Rough and Tumble is the home of Circling Seattle Sports, I was thinking of coming here if that's okay with you.
I think that makes a lot of sense. See y'all here.